Welcome back to Free Media. I'm Andrew Heaton, probably.
And I am also Robby Soave. So, Democratic Senator John Fetterman made some waves this week, claiming he thinks Kamala Harris lost the 2024 election when she called Donald Trump a fascist. Let's watch.
I don't know why, and I've always refused to say that. And when then the Vice President Harris referred to President Trump as a fascist, and I knew absolutely we lost the plot at that point. You know, if you call the president or someone like a fascist, you're effectively calling the people that are going to vote for him, and then they must be fascists too, or they support fascism and those things, and that's just not true. That's just not it. I happen to know, and I love a lot of people that voted for the president, and they're not fascists, they're not Nazis, they're not trying to destroy the Constitution and all those things. They just happen to have a different priorities, and they love our country in the same ways that Democrats do as well. So I refuse to do those kinds of a thing, because that kind of extreme kinds of rhetoric makes it easier for those kinds of extreme kinds of actions, even like what happened to poor Charlie Kirk and that. And now why you can't allow people to grieve and now use that an opportunity to criticize or to turn it into something. It's like, that's just basic humanity there. And like, we're forgetting that we need each other. We need each other here. And now I refuse to be a part of it and comparing people to Hitler and those things, because if that's what's required to win, then I refuse to.
So I have always appreciated John Fetterman's interest in kind of reaching across the aisle and trying to have very friendly and civil relationships with Republicans. I always try to point out that it is not only good, but politically, tactically sound. He is a senator for the pivotal swing state. And now, while he might not be able to survive a primary challenge because Democrats hate him so much, if he were the Democratic candidate, he would be more likely to be reelected in a state that has actually voted for Donald Trump last time, the must-win state. So Democrats have this kind of purity test they apply to him, but not to then an actual socialist person like Mamdani, who's going to be there. Why is it a very conservative-leaning Democrat is no good, but the most left-leaning Democrat is not okay? I don't know. It confuses me. Now, on the other hand, I don't want to tell people that they can't, use aggressive language to describe people. I'm like, that's authoritarian, that's fascist, that's communist, Marxist, that's me. And also that's everyone in the Trump administration about their enemies. Yeah. So it's always a little bit rich when they're like, whoa. Excuse me, communist, Marxist, Stalinist. How dare you say I'm an authoritarian?
No, they're mostly lizard people.
Right.
Like I don't.
They're all right. They're all fascists and they're all communists.
No, I think, there's a couple of, so, I think the problem is trying to dismiss somebody by labeling them.
Yeah.
Like in the 90s, it was much more common to go socialist, and that just meant a Democrat I don't like.
Yeah.
In the same way that I think
that's continued.
It has continued.
Right.
In the same way that colloquially, a fascist is a Republican that I'm afraid of.
Right.
Now there are things that are like economic fascism would be when the private sector owns the property and the government tells you how you're going to do it. I would argue that the purchase of Intel stock would be an example of that.
Ironically, that is the most fascist thing the administration has done in terms of what the definition of fascism is.
So there are. Yeah. That being said, though, when you're using it as a way to make people not think about something, that guy's a fascist, done. I don't think it's helpful. Also, I think the term fascist is so misunderstood and so loaded that we probably should just retire it from American politics, because it doesn't like I think Woodrow Wilson probably would have qualified as a fascist if the term had existed back then. But it is such a inherently loaded term that I think it ends up obfuscating things more than it elucidates
because what
them.
both Republicans and Democrats do when they get to power is practice a kind of crony corporatism where the government selectively favors certain industries or indeed certain firms within those industries that the political leader, the party in charge, thinks is either good to be propped up for like well-meaning reasons, although you and I would say that's never a good idea because the government shouldn't pick winners or losers, or to reward some supporter who wants this. If you point to Trump. That's, favorable economic conditions for maybe allies in the tech sector, maybe Elon Musk, people of that nature. Trump himself has alleged that the fallout between the two of them was because he wanted to stop subsidizing electric cars, which I'm all for the end of subsidizing electric cars. Elon says that's not true. He's happy to have his electric cars not subsidized and compete against anyone else. On the Democratic side, there were all sorts of economic boondoggles in the Obama administration and the Biden administration, green energy initiatives, those kinds, Solyndra type things. Or we're going to invest all this money in this, nothing comes of it. So that's the bad economic ideology of both our parties. It's not actually fascism. It's not actually communism. It's just bad. Corporatism is the name for it.
Like if we want to get really into it, like I've heard think pieces
let's get really into
that Trump is more of a Peronist. I don't know enough about Peron to know that, but that sounds more accurate to me.
Right.
But I agree with Fetterman's basic interpretation of what's going on here. Like the great news is most of the people that we share this country with are decent human beings. Most of the time, we want to have a place that is free, prosperous, and safe. We're arguing about how to achieve those ends. We're arguing about methodology. We're not arguing about teleology. And for most of American history, at least in my lifetime, we've actually agreed on the same basic principles. The issue is when they come into conflict, which one are we prioritizing? Are we prioritizing safety over freedom? Are we prioritizing? These are good conversations to have. And being able to acknowledge that somebody voted for Trump, even though I disagree. Like one of my best friends voted for Trump. That's fine. I don't agree with him on it, but I know he's a decent man. I appreciate why he did. I think he was wrong, but I appreciate why he did it. It doesn't impact my interpretation of him. I definitely don't think he's a fascist. So I think Fetterman's heart's in the right place there, and I wish more people did that. One of the things that bothers me about the lizard people that run our country is that there's a lot of power and influence to be made in selling fear and selling hatred. And it is awful to make people afraid of their neighbors. You shouldn't be afraid of your neighbors. The people that live across the street from you that voted for Kamala Harris or voted for Donald Trump are probably decent people that would come help you if your house caught fire. And that's the country I live in. I want to keep living in that.
I have no problem with people in either direction who say, I don't agree with everything the Democrats represent, but, I really don't. These are the things I really don't like about Donald Trump, and so I feel compelled to vote for Kamala Harris because she's better. Or the other way around. People who, I know friends and family members who, I don't like everything Donald Trump does at all. I wish he wouldn't do X, Y, or Z, but my business will be impacted by the economic policies of the Democratic Party much more negatively, so what can I do? That's who I'm voting for. I not only do I not disagree with that, I kind of agree with that. What I can't stand is people who will just make excuses for everything that would clearly, if the other side did it, like how can people defend Trump taking equity, or the U.S. government taking equity stake in companies, where like if a Democrat did that, you would just lose, you would correctly lose your mind.
By the way, they will, because that can has been open now. Like when fucking Harry Sisson, that little puke, or like a sentient blue sky program takes over and becomes president, or what they're going to do the same thing. It's all going to be a mess when that happens.
Well, that's my frustration with some people on the right these days, that they have this moment of the unique opportunity where they wield more political power right now pretty much than they ever have in my adult life. And they could be using this power to blunt the instruments of our oppression, to dash the knives, to make it so that if Democrats came back in power, they would not be able to weaponize these institutions against us, against the right, against whoever, ever again. And they're just not doing that. They're seizing the opportunity to do a little bit of oppressing of their own. And I get the whole kind of Christopher Rufo argument, like, well, we can't just unilaterally disarm, they're never going to treat us fairly. Like, that's their perspective, whatever. Like, okay, I'm not saying that now that you have power, do nothing with it. I'm saying use that power to weaken institutions that they think are bad.
Throw the ring in the volcano?
It's very much that, no, the ring must go to Gondor, give Gondor the weapon of the enemy. It is, they are doing that on a level that is baffling to me, given that this opportunity to again, harm the institutions in a positive way is not likely to recur necessarily for years. And they're just misusing the opportunity. Doge was a major misuse of this opportunity to scale down the federal government, to stop its footprint on this earth, a conservative goal for years. And they're just like, no, let's have the government own part of a company. That sets no bad precedence for what Democrats will do. And they're like, well, Democrats will do that anyway. I'm like, well, you're making it a lot easier for them to do it. You could make it harder. You could pass laws right now saying this can't be done. You control Congress and the presidency and the Supreme Court, and they just won't do it.
Yeah, no, I think that's completely accurate.
Yeah.
One of the things so in the last election, I went to the Republican National Convention, I went to the Democratic National Convention, I went to the Libertarian Convention. We're on reasons, so let's get into some inter-family disputes here. I anticipated at the Libertarian Convention that the two tectonic plates rubbing into each other would be the classical liberal minarchists and the anarchists.
Yeah.
And that was not the impression I got. The impression I got was there was a group of people that were libertarian, and there was a group of people that just hate progressives.
Right.
And I see that in the conservative movement, and I see that in the libertarian movement. And it's not everybody, but I would want to make decisions based on trying to achieve some end,
Right.
as opposed to pissing you off because I hate you. And the pissing you off because I hate you as a strategy goal, I think will end up backfiring.
Well, and it's additionally not smart for the Libertarian Party to necessarily do that, because there is already a party for people whose highest priority is to hate progressives, and we're not going, that thing exists. So don't just be an additional Republican Party, be for maybe the smaller and smaller number of Americans who are principled in their approach to what the economic policy should be or what the government policy should be. And like, who are you expecting to win over if you just submit to the exact same strategy of the Republican Party? That's what was so weird about what happened.
To go back to the very beginning premise that we had on the fascist thing,
Yeah.
for the folks that are really freewheeling with the word fascist, you shouldn't be in favor of gun control. Like
Yeah.
if you're like, they're
yeah.
fascists, but we need more gun control. I'm
Yeah.
like, do you?
Well, that's
would
an
that be the-
endless liberal problem. Like, what do you? That is, if by your logic we live under fascist occupation, we want to be armed to the teeth. And we are armed to the teeth, and it's a good thing. Yeah, they don't like when you point that out so much. All right, thanks for watching this week. We've had another fascinating discussion. We'll be back next week with more free media. Let us know how we're doing. Suggest shock collars for my friend Andrew Heaton here. And don't worry, Wallace is perfectly safe. We love him. See you next week.
Bye.